15, we'll call this meeting to order. We'd like to welcome everyone that is in the audience tonight. If you would please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Diane, would you please read the school board norms?
The board developed norms are: decisions will be based on the board's strategic plan, its mission, and what's best for students. The board will act as stewards of tax dollars. Board members will complete foundation work to be prepared for meetings. Meetings will be efficient, all perspectives will be voiced and heard, and all board members will maintain a professional decorum.
Thank you. We have nothing under public communication. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare? Moving on to the consent agenda, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Roger, second by Steve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving into our regular agenda, we're going to start the meeting off with recognition. So as we have the pleasure of recognizing teachers and staff members that have been serving our district for 10 years and also 25 years. And so it is our pleasure to do so. As your name is called, please come forward. We have a small token.
Okay, I will read the 10 years of service recipients. Todd Roth, Gusner Elementary. Casey Schlafman, Gusner. Pam Schmiedeberg, Gusner. Christy Lloyd, Lincoln. Candace Sedler, Lincoln. Andy Skunberg, Lincoln. Heidi Walker, Lincoln. Alana LaPlante, Middle School. Velma Doctor, Roosevelt. Mary Grimm, High School. Ben Smith from the high school. And Amy Newstell from the district office. And Janelle Munson from Lincoln.
Thank you for your service. We'll move on to the 25 years of service awards for our district. We'll start with Darby Heinert, James Valley Career Technical Center. Don Rainey from the middle school. Dave Beach, Lincoln and Roosevelt Elementary. And Michelle Zuther from the district office. Thank you for serving our district for 25 years.
So moving on into our agenda, we have nothing under correspondence, so we'll move into reports. The first report is the Student Council report, and we have Ashlyn Schauer with us this evening. Welcome, come on up.
All right, hi. I'm a senior at high school. I am the treasurer of our Executive Board Student Council. Jessica Chandler, our president, couldn't be here today because she was sick, so I'm here filling in her spot. I wanted to start by thanking everyone who donated their time and their effort for our t-shirts, our homecoming t-shirts. We were able to give all of our students and some of our faculty free t-shirts this year for homecoming. It was a group effort with the community, with businesses, and with our students, and I know it made a huge impact on our students, and we received a lot of thank you cards and letters telling us how much it meant to them. So it was really great that you guys could help us and a lot of people could help us with that. Right now we are working on getting our stuff ready for our blood drive that's coming up in the beginning of November. So right now we're just getting things and preparing for that project.
Great. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Jason?
The homecoming T-shirts, is it being considered to make that like a new tradition?
Yeah, we talked with our advisor of the student council and with our president and vice president, and we think it should be a tradition, and with a lot more help and businesses are willing to donate, we think it'd be pretty great. Especially Originals was a huge help for us this year, and everyone was a huge help. We're hoping to make it a tradition.
Great. Mr. Toso?
Have you had the state convention yet?
Not yet.
Okay, that's coming up.
Yeah, so we are prepping one of our juniors to run for the state board, which will be fun, especially having Jessica Chandler, our president, on the state board this year. So we're hoping to get another member up there.
Great, good luck.
That's wonderful. We always like representation. And Heidi?
And just for our public that's watching, just maybe talk about a few of the homecoming activities that happened the week leading up to it and the events. Thank you.
Our entire week of our student council, we fundraised for T-shirts. We got the community and everyone ready for our homecoming game. Our Wednesday, we offered students a $1 donut, so before their first hour class, they could buy a donut for $1 to help start off their day in a brighter way. We had dress up and fun days throughout the week, and it was a really fun week to lead up to our homecoming game. And on Friday, everyone wore their white T-shirts with our homecoming shirts on them, and it was really cool to see a sea of white at your school.
Very good. Anything else? Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ashlyn. You did a beautiful job filling in. So then we will move on in our agenda. Item number 2 under reports is the superintendent's report. Dr. Leck?
Hey, thank you. You have my written report. I just want to touch on a few different items. The School Boards Association presentation later this week. I'll be conducting a breakout session. If any members want to join me, I will do the heavy lift of presenting what we're doing in terms of some of the governance strategies that we've implemented here in Jamestown. I'm focusing on board norms and board education. I think those are the no-cost, high-leverage kinds of strategies that really help to build capacity in board members to be able to do your jobs. I've talked about this many times, and I feel like sometimes you are the forgotten stakeholders and they're forgotten educational leaders. We do a lot with providing professional development for everybody else, and we sometimes leave you in the dust. So we want to make sure that you're have the right kind of capacity to be able to make the decisions, the really important decisions that you're asked to make at every meeting. And the board norms, as the board is aware, that's something we adopted a number of years ago to help come to consensus on what do good boards do, what do we want, how do we want our board to operate, how do we hold each other accountable as a group of individuals working collectively as a board. So those are the 2 areas that I want to focus on in this presentation. In the past, when I've done this, it's been kind of on a big level. It's a research study that's a little dry, and we got great feedback, but I think one of the questions that we got asked a lot was, well, how do I apply this? How can I do something like this? What can I do with it? And so when School Board Association asked for me to do this one more time, that's when I wanted to really focus on, well, let's make it applicable to people. I want something that any board could do in their boardroom, whether they are Drake or Fargo. So if you have an interest in presenting this with me, like I said, I'll do the heavy lift of presenting and maybe just ask for that board member perspective on these different areas. And I've attached my presentation and the 2 different activities that we'll be doing. Just a reminder, the deadlines or the timeline for the superintendent evaluation is upcoming. One of the other things I wanted to touch on was we sent in an application to be a road test school. And so what that means in terms of driver's ed is your school district can really by doing what we're doing right now, there's very little change to what we're doing. You have to adopt a certain curriculum, which we already use in the classroom, and then adopt a checklist, the DOT checklist for the behind the wheel, which one of our 2 instructors is already doing. The other has already agreed, well, that is essentially what I already do. And so this just makes sense. So essentially what would happen if we are approved to be a road test school is currently, if you complete driver's ed, you get 1 certificate. That certificate says you've completed driver's ed. Now you would get 1 of 2 certificates, 1 saying you've completed, 1 saying that you meet the criteria to be considered for a waiver of the driver's test. I think we all know, well, I know, having been a parent that recently has to schedule a driver's test, we were 3 months out. They weren't scheduling in town. We went to Devil's Lake. And that was 3.5 months out. And there is a huge bottleneck. There just isn't the local capacity. And so essentially what would happen if you then met that criteria from the behind the wheel, the 6 hours of behind the wheel, you would be able to take that other certificate back to the DOT, and they would say, well, we want to test you, or they don't. I mean, really the liability still holds with DOT. They would be able to say, well, we want to test or we don't want to test, but they have the ability to waive if you've reached a certain criteria on this road test school. So to me, I see it as a win-win for everybody. Our community wins because our families have another option, kids have another option. Our DOT wins. They have a real glut, especially with the Real ID right now, that there's a lot of work being asked to do by that office. And so if we can release that bottleneck, a little bit of pressure, and really get a good product for our kids, a good opportunity for our kids, I think it's a great opportunity. We haven't been approved. It's just something that we've applied to do. But wanted to make you aware, I think it's a great opportunity, especially for those that are waiting right now. And then a Striving Readers grant update. You're well aware, we've talked about it a number of times, that we received a Striving Readers grant, 3-year grant. Well, the state applied for another grant, and they've received it, $45 million, and it's a 5-year grant that would actually cross over for the 2020-2021 school year. So if we plan to write another grant, we plan to go after this opportunity also. And so you'd actually see a double up in what would be the first year of this grant, the last year of the existing grant. And so there would be an opportunity for what we're doing to extend all the way to 2024, 2025, which I think is a really awesome opportunity that could continue to reap benefits in Jamestown in supporting literacy. I do know from talking to the department that they are looking for those Striving Readers grant, the existing Striving Readers grant schools to reapply again. And that's something that we feel would be very advantageous to us. So that's something to look forward to. And I did provide an updated budget for you as well, just to show you how we're budgeting for those dollars. But I would stand for questions if you have any.
Any questions for Dr. Leck? Diane?
I have 2 questions. The first is, when is your presentation, the day and the time at the school board convention?
Friday at 10:30, I think, is the exact time, but it's in the schedule.
And the second question has to do with the driving criteria. The way I'm hearing it, they would have just as many hours behind the wheel. All they would do is waive the DOT test. And you mentioned we would present it. Whether they waive or not, are you picturing that just being based on their bottleneck or on the student himself or herself?
I'm not sure what criteria the DOT would use. They would have that, but they would create the criteria for whatever that is, just like they do now. The student takes the test, a driver's test, they make a decision. Basically what they're saying is there's an opportunity to potentially waive. No student would be guaranteed a waiver of the driving test. And I'm not sure what criteria the DOT uses for that. Just like right now, I'm not entirely sure what criteria they use to assess the driving test now. But that would be the liability of the DOT to decide. We would just be providing a certificate to a student that they received the requisite score to be considered for a waiver.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Oh, Dr. Leck?
One other comment about this, and I know that there's a big push through the DOT. I know that a number of school districts have been road test schools for over a year. I did talk with some, Mandan being one, and they've seen only positive things from this in their community that they've seen thus far. They've been doing it for 18 months, I think is what they applied 18 months ago, something like that. I wasn't aware of it until recently, so.
Just real
Jason?
quick, sorry. So our role would be just to provide that piece of paper, and then that we wouldn't be responsible for collecting any fees or DMV or DOT fees. Okay.
So essentially, every student they get a certificate now. It's just that there would be one of two certificates they would get. One, they would meet the criteria to be considered for the waiver. They would take that certificate to the DMV, and they would make a determination on if they have to take a test or not.
Okay, anything else on the superintendent's report? Okay, so moving on in our agenda then, we are on to board education, and we will be looking at understanding multiple perspectives. Also, Dr. Leck.
So I'm going to put my teacher hat on. And I want to provide some, if you've looked at before, it was actually attached in my superintendent report. I collect that historical data on what we've provided in board education. One of the areas that we have provided the least amount is that analytical competency. How do you make decisions at the table, understanding that there are varied perspectives that exist in any decision. And so I want you to go through, and this is actually very similar to an assignment that we provided for the Teacher Leadership Academy. I know that Dr. Larson was witness to some of that when she was observing in there as we were waiting to move to a different meeting. And so I'm still going to ask you to participate, but don't share any secrets. But really, this is all about how difficult it is to sit at a board table, just like it is as an administrator or a teacher or other staff member, to recognize that I come to the table with a perspective when I'm asked to make a decision. And that's true of if I'm doing that in a professional capacity. It's true whether I'm acting as a parent or in any other decision-making capacity. We come with a perspective. If we only consider that one perspective, though, we have a very myopic look at whatever solution we could solve. And we do much better when we are able to look through the lens of multiple perspectives. You generally get to the right answer. And I'm not suggesting, you're going to look at one called the 4-frame model, and I'll talk about it just a little bit. And I'm not suggesting that you make every decision you say, well, in the structural frame, we would do this. But when you practice looking through that in a purposeful way, you do start to cycle through them in not quite as robotic of a way. Okay? But I do still think it's important, and I want to share that with you. So the 4 frames that we look through are the structural, the human resource, the political, and the symbolic. And I'm going to talk just a little bit about what each of them are and kind of put it into context for you a little bit. So the structural frame, more analogous to a factory or a machine, supported in disciplines such as management sciences, sociology. The central concepts are, I'm going to create roles for everybody. Everybody's going to have a job description. We have goals as an organization, as a department. And that's what we're going to strive to meet. We're going to have strategies that help us meet those goals and to make sure that everybody has the capacity to do what their job is. And we focus on policy. That's the structural frame. So the image of leadership, social architecture, everybody has roles. There's a caste system. Everybody has that certain organization. And then the basic leadership challenge is, how do I get the structure of my organization and that task to match what I'm trying to do, the technology that's available, and the environment that I'm working in. Okay, so that's just a quick hit on what the structural frame is. So the human resource frame, more analogous to a family. It's supported in disciplines, obviously, such as psychology. The central concepts are, we focus on the needs. What are the needs of those that work within the organization, what are the skills that they need, and how do those relationships operate between the different members and those different jobs that people have and those different roles. The most important factor is how was the relationship between all of those people, and how is their synergy between how they operate. The image of leadership is one of empowerment, how I am empowering, or that leader is empowering somebody else to do their work. And then the basic leadership challenge is trying to align what the needs are in the organization and what the needs are for each individual person. So that is the human resource frame. The political frame, more analogous to a jungle, and I don't mean that as a joke, but it is more analogous to a lot of things happening at one time. It's supported in disciplines, again, obviously the political science. Central concepts for the political frame, ranges of power, who does what. Conflict, and I don't mean, I've said this before, especially to the board, conflict gets a bad rap. I think conflict is a good thing. Conflict means that people are sharing in a positive way, and if it carries on after the conflict, that's when conflict becomes a negative thing. But sharing of perspectives is a good thing. And competition. Image of leadership, I see it closer to advocacy. How am I advocating for a certain position or a certain perspective? The basic leadership challenge is to develop an agenda. How are we going to get these things done? Understanding there's different perspectives out there. How is it that all of these things get done? The last one is the symbolic frame, analogous to a carnival, a temple, or a theater. Supported in disciplines such as anthropology and institutional theory. This one is a little more abstract of a frame, but the central concepts in this frame are culture, ritual. How do we do things? How are we taking care of the organization culturally? How are we considering that really our work is about people working together, stories, how they're interacting together? What does that mean to me, as opposed to what is the work that I'm doing? There's a greater connection between me as a person and the work that I do personally and professionally. There's a great deal of synergy between those concepts. The image of a leader then is one that inspires in the symbolic frame. And the biggest challenge is to create faith, belief, and meaning. So if those are the central pieces, if I need to be inspired, well, there's a lot of foundation that needs to happen there in terms of creating that belief and the meaning. So those are the 4 frames. So what I want you to do, again, I'm going to put my teacher hat on, so you have to put your student hats on. And so I'm going to ask you to get up and be in 4 different areas, and I'm going to make Sally do it too. Just because I can, I think. So what I want you to do is I want you to go into Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, and Group 4. Okay? So I want you, if you connect more with the structural, that's that factory or machine. And if you want me to go back, I can touch on these again. Group 2 is the human resources, the idea that family is the lens that I view through. Group 3 is political. That's the jungle analogy. Group 4 is the symbolic. That's the carnival, temple, theater, telling stories frame. So I'm gonna who feels like they are in the structural? Okay, you are my group leader. Who feels like they are in the human resource family? Jason, you are the leader here. Group 3, the political. Sally?
I guess I'm political.
Do you want us just in order?
Yep.
So,
Yeah, and then you can be
necessarily
here.
going to the ones
Okay.
just to be in a-
Yep, so you can help me out. Okay, so this is what I'm going to have you do. Oh, you're by yourself? See, what's interesting to me is when we did this in the TLA, the Teacher Leadership Academy, we had everybody in those 2. So that's an interesting. Okay, so this is what I'm going to ask you to do. I want you to talk with your partner or just contemplate on your own why you gravitated to this corner of the room. So what is it about this frame that connected to you as an individual? Because if this is the frame that you view things through or your preferred, okay, you have a nice dynamic group here. Because if people are seeing things a little bit differently, which I said in terms of conflict, that's actually very healthy. And so I want you to do that and just share briefly with why you selected this frame. See, we have some non-rule followers over here, already opened the envelope. That's okay. But I want you to just talk real briefly about why you selected this frame. Shh. Okay, so I'll give you just another minute or so to finish up. Okay, so now I want you to open your envelope. And this is what you're going to do. I already gave you a spokesperson. So that's the person who's going to be your spokesperson in your group. And you are going to have to talk and come to consensus on what you find to be in your envelope. It's a picture of something. And so I want you to come to consensus on what it is. It shouldn't take you very long. And the other question I want you to answer is, how convinced are you that your description of this is an accurate description based on your corner of the room? So what is it that you see? Because you are going to be asked to describe it to the group. Everybody ready? Okay. So group one, this is your picture. Can you try to describe this for the rest of us?
Sure. It is a child's building block cube with a dot on the top of the cube and the same type of dot also on the right side of the cube. So it has two dots total.
Okay. That is a very good description of what you see from your perspective. So thank you. Jason, you're group two?
We see a one-dimensional blue box with a circle right in the center of it, and it is a relatively small circle.
Okay, thank you. That is also a very good description of your perspective.
Red triangle.
Oh, group three.
Red triangle.
Red triangle. Also, yes, good description. Group four.
We see a red, 1.5-inch diameter
Oh, very good, yeah.
circle, which could also look like a clown nose or Rudolph's nose.
Well, you're definitely going in the symbolic. I like that. I appreciate the. Okay, so this, what you're actually looking at, you all understand what you're looking at from your own perspective. But I want to share with you what you're actually looking at. This is the exterior. This picture is only the exterior, six-sided cube, or six-sided. What you're really seeing, though, is the cone in a box. So if you look back at this, you see group one has the exterior, right? It's the exterior of the box. Group two, your perspective is from the top of the box. Okay? Group three, you're the triangle. You're looking through this hole and looking at the red cone. So your only perspective you see when looking through the hole is the red triangle. And our last group is looking through the hole in the box, the top of the box, through group two's perspective. You're looking down through, and all you can see from that red cone is a circle, the red circle. The point of all of this is, if you only see things from your own perspective or your preferred perspective, you're missing the boat. You're missing the whole perspective. You're only seeing a very small side of whatever issue it is that you're looking at. And so you have to be purposeful in looking at not only what you see or what perspective you might bring to the table, but also you need to look at what other people and listen to what other people are saying. And as the more you see from that different perspective, you can figure out, well, this isn't actually the question that or the issue I'm looking at. It's actually much broader than that, just like in this exercise. And so the last thing I want to leave you with is there's a poem, a piece of this poem from The Blind Man and the Elephant. So often theological wars, the disputants I ween, rail on in utter ignorance of what each other mean, and prate about an elephant none of them has seen. What do you think I mean by that? Why did I include this in there? What's the message? What's the moral that I'm trying to share with you? When you look at the blind man and the elephant.
We assume a lot.
There's danger in assuming, right? There's danger in assuming. The blind man in this, go ahead.
Well, if someone, in this case, it looks like he's feeling, or she is feeling the elephant, then you try and describe that to somebody else, would you be able to do it, and would the person be able to understand what you're describing?
Right, and the other piece of that is we sometimes talk from that one perspective and we fail to recognize the impact of the other perspective. We talk on and on potentially about something we don't know all the components to. Just like the blind man is talking about how the elephant, what an elephant might be like, that he can't see and has only heard about. So just wanted to leave you with that, and that's just a little exercise that I hope helps to reframe how we need to look at more than just what you prefer to see, but listen to what others are sharing with you as well. A little bit. Just kidding.
Well, thank you, Dr. Leck, for getting us up out of our seats at our meeting and having us participate. It's always a good reminder to make sure we're listening to other perspectives as is written in our board norms. Well, so thank you. So reinforcing that. Let's move on then in our agenda. We have nothing under old business, so we will go ahead and move into new business. Nothing under activities. Oh, I apologize. We need to go back up. I jumped right over it because I missed it. We're going to go back up into our regular agenda, item number E, strategic plan goal review, government's development. Dr. Leck.
So as the board is aware, we have set up a schedule that for each component of our strategic plan, so every goal we're going to review on an annual basis, so we created a schedule. In this meeting, we have targeted Strategic Initiative 2 and Goal 3, which focuses all on governance development. You have 3 different objectives or 4 different objectives, 5 different objectives under here, sorry. And I want to just touch on each of these, and we want to talk about some of the things that we are doing and have committed to doing. The first objective, we wanted to conduct local professional development, which we do at every board meeting, as the board is aware, which we just did some, and we do that across the 6 competencies of effective governance, and we embed them into school board meetings. The reasons that we do that is there's one time we know that job-embedded professional development is the most effective way to provide professional development. We know this for teachers. This is something we do and we try to do, and we embed it into the job. Well, the time that you are on the job is right now. This is the time when you are at the table together, working collectively, when we can get all of the information to all of you at one time and have you hear the same message, is when you're together. And so that's why we've decided to embed it into each of our board meetings to ensure that everybody's hearing the same message and that we are as responsive to what your needs are as we possibly can. That's another reason we ask if there's any board education that you feel like you're lacking, we try to provide that. And so one of the things that we'll do at our board retreat, upcoming board retreat, is to look at all of those different areas in the 6 different competencies and ask you to review what we've done and suggest topics that could better build your capacity, because that's really what we're focused on doing here, so you can continue to make the best possible decisions that you can. Objective 2, maintain our school board norms and our goals. These should be separate from your strategic plan. These are your goals. These are not the district goals. They are your norms, your goals, and how you want to operate. I think that these particular norms were created and reviewed by a board that, to be honest, is different than this board. And I think, I guess I would suggest when you look at these norms again in our board retreat coming up at a date to be determined, that you consider, are these the right norms for our board? And we've done that in the past in different orientations and in different retreats. And I do think that as the board evolves and changes, you may want to consider, are these the norms? Are these norms that were created and continually reviewed, are they still the goals and the norms that you expect as this group of 9 individuals, as opposed to the 9 individuals that originally drafted what these goals are? So that's something that you might want to consider. Objective 3 is to create and implement a board self-assessment that includes a perspective on both individual and collective board governance. The reason we talked about this, if you remember, those that are involved in the strategic plan and when you approve the strategic plan, we talked about the importance that, well, you make decisions individually and you see things individually, but there's value also in looking collectively at the board. I do this versus we do this. You see a different perspective, again, just like we went through our piece of board education, and we see the frames a little bit differently when you're thinking about, well, this is what I do, this is what our board does. And so I think there's value in looking both individually and collectively on that board self-assessment. You would do that assessment prior to evaluating me. How the board is operating is a direct, there's a direct connection between how the board operates and what you want from me as the chief administrator and what your needs are. And so having a self-assessment that prior to evaluating the superintendent's position only makes sense. It's supported in best practice. So that's something that I'm working on, and the first 2 things we've talked about, when that will happen. One, it happens, Objective 1 happens continually. Objective 2 will happen at a board retreat, or I'm suggesting it happens at a board retreat. Objective 3, that's something that I'll be working on, and I'll provide you with something by March of 2020 that you could adopt as the board self-assessment. Objective 4 is revise the orientation process for new school board members. We have a great, I think we have a very comprehensive school board orientation. There's a great process for onboarding. One of the things that I've wanted to do differently, we've adopted the 6 competencies, and I think we can do a better job of aligning the 6 competencies with what we do in orientation. I think they connect very well, but if we're being honest, I think we focus a lot on contextual and we focus a lot on educational. We don't focus as much on the interpersonal, the strategic. Well, we do the strategic pretty well too, but the political, what are those partnerships that exist in our community, and the analytical. How do we help to make decisions? We've done different things in those arenas, but I think those are, if we're looking at how we can improve, that would be one. And that's something I would like to do prior to us having another election in June of 2020. So that's the timeline there. Objective 5, increase our opportunities to engage with community partners. I think we do a really nice job of connecting the work of school to community partners. So the education roles that we have, we've had different pieces of board education from our art center to Two Rivers Activity Center. We've had a lot of different partnerships that exist, and schools should. We should have great partnerships within the community. One of the things that I think we could do better is coordinating between political entities, Sutsman County, our city, and how are we, what are the plans in each of those areas? If we had a greater connection, we had a greater awareness between what are the major projects, major issues, the strengths that the city sees or the county sees, if they can understand where we're going with our strategic plan, we understand where those other entities are going with their strategic plans, we can make better decisions as a school board because we're all taxing the same individuals. We are all really servicing the same families. We're operating in the same community. We need to have a better understanding of what we're all doing. And then again, this is all about being able to, from a governance standpoint, make the best possible decisions that we can. And so I would suggest that sometime after our retreat, maybe plan for spring of 2020, we can invite people in and see if we can organize a joint board meeting, or the first of hopefully a number of different joint board meetings between us and our school board and other political subdivisions. So that is your strategic plan overview. I'd stand for some questions if you have any.
Yes, thank you. Any questions? Bob?
Yeah, obviously, we've had 3 bond issues that failed, and in each of the 3 cases, I think part of the problem we had was that another entity had large tax increases just prior to ours, and so I think this is a step in there. Obviously, we still have the same issues, and at some point in the future, we're going to have to come back with some other kind of plan, and it would be good to do it when there isn't all the, I don't want to say negativity, that's wrong, but the backlash from having other entities having imposed some tax increases. So I think this would be a good part of starting the next process. So thank you.
Well, I think it's important to remember that everybody, we all have different strategic, we all have different goals, but when we reach out to the community, we're reaching out to the same people. And so when we're making plans, it's very helpful to know what other people are doing or what other entities are doing. So when it's time for us to make whatever decision it is that we need to make, everybody else is on the same page, and maybe there's some timing issues, as Mr. Toso has referenced, that we need to be more in tune to. So when we're asking, when we're making that ask, the timing is right, and it's a manageable lift for people.
Great. Diane?
I agree with Mr. Toso. I think it's an area that we've been lacking in and that we could really use some improvement in. And we're a small enough town that there's absolutely no reason we can't do this. Coordinate well with our city council and our county, and I'm really looking forward to that. And the other thing I would add to this list, which I hear from my public, is the University of Jamestown. Particularly going forward on any athletic facility development, I have heard a lot of people tell me that they'd like to see some more transparent talks with UJ. And so I would like to see them on the list as well.
Any other comments or questions related to the government's development? Okay. I think we've shown how we work really well with a lot of our community partners, with the Art Center, with TRAC, with Park and Rec. We do, as Dr. Lex said, we do a really good job, but we have had, in improving our community, because we are applying for grants that our community benefits from. And so anytime we can expand, that it will be time well spent. So let's charge forward with that. Okay, so now we'll go ahead on to our agenda. So under F, there is old business. We have no old business, so moving on into new business. There's nothing under activities and grounds, and nothing under buildings and grounds or activities, nothing under curriculum assessment and instruction. So moving on into finance, we have the general fund balance for our information.
Madam President?
Yep, Jason.
I'm sorry. Back to buildings and grounds. I was just curious if this fall wet weather has presented any new opportunities for any of our facilities, as well as challenges. Anything come about because of our wet weather that, that we weren't aware of, or is going to cause us some issue down the road? Anything new, really?
No, I think we continue to monitor our facilities with every weather event. Anytime you have extreme weather, you see wear and tear on different areas, and we continue to operate really well with our summer projects planning, and that's the process we'll continue to work with and triage as we need to with those things that come up. But that is, that's the process.
Thank you. So under finance, we have the general fund balance. Sally, that is for our information, correct?
Correct.
And then can I have a motion to approve the monthly financial reports? Motion by Bob, seconded by Greg. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have nothing under personnel. or policy and procedures, so moving on into tuition. Can I have a motion to approve a tuition agreement for a kindergartner and a first grade Jamestown student to attend Kensal Public School for the 2019-2020 school year? Motion by Roger, second by Melissa. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there any items for future agenda? Melissa?
I would like to just again request that we bring up the reason that the mill levy did not pass before the January time that you guys were thinking about. I realize we can't make any decisions or anything on it, like quickly, but just kind of bring to light what people have heard through the community as to why it didn't pass and start the conversations about that so that we can get it going if we're going to do something so that we can get that on a June ballot if we decide and not do a special election.
Well, we will, sorry, go ahead.
Just for clarification, you want to have that discussion prior to the board retreat?
Correct.
Okay.
We start the discussion, started
Okay.
talking about it.
Heidi?
I was just wondering if we, because I think a board retreat would be a good place to break that down. Typically, we do have our board retreat in the fall, and I know we had a lot of things going on this fall that we moved it to January, but maybe perhaps we want to try to fit that in over the next 4 to 6 weeks. We can just look at schedules and see that. I don't know how the rest of the board feels about that, but typically, like I said, I think we've had it August, September, October before, usually October. So yeah, it's usually October. I guess maybe many years ago we'd had it in August, but so it's just something to think about.
Roger?
I'd prefer it at the board retreat myself, because we have a more open dialogue and so on, and just, as far as discussing things, at a regular board meeting, we kind of, we talk about some things, but we really don't get into the crux of things, so.
Yeah, it's a business meeting. Jason, did you have a comment? I thought I saw your hand.
Well, I just want to back up what Melissa was saying, and I think her point is the sooner the better, so we're not behind the 8 ball in getting information out to the public. Should a June 2020 referendum be in the plan? And I don't think anyone around this table disagree, but I mean, if we need to have a quick special meeting at some point, I'd be up for that or anything, so. I agree, the sooner the better.
Okay, great. We will see what we can do with that. Heidi?
I just want to make sure the public's aware that board retreats are open meetings, just so everybody is aware of that. However, it just does give us an opportunity to maybe work in small groups and just work in a different way than sitting around the table, and just helps us to dig into things a little bit. It's a long, sometimes 3-hour, 4-hour process of a meeting to work in a different way. And so I just want to make sure, though, the public is aware they are open meetings just like any other are. Yes.
Yes, thank you. And going through discussing some of those things isn't quite in the business meeting format, so doing it at the board retreat. And so I will work with Dr. Leck to try to get it moved up, or at least have maybe a mini retreat or something to talk about that. Diane, did you have something?
I just would suggest the first 2 weeks in November. I know that it's going to get crazy after that, so then we will have to wait till January. So I think it's still a little bit slow right now, so that might be a good target time.
Okay, well, we will work on that. Thank you, everyone. Was there any other items for future agendas that you'd like to have discussed? Board education, perhaps? Okay, well, if you think of something, please feel free to email myself or Dr. Leck. We are watching for those. So we have some meetings coming up. This Thursday and Friday, we have the North Dakota School Board Association Convention in Bismarck. There are a handful of us that will be traveling to that to attend and get further education to be the best board members that we can be. And then we also have the next school board meeting, which is on Monday, November 4th, here in this room at 5:15. Are there any other items that, or excuse me, any other meetings that needed to be mentioned? Have I missed any? Okay, very good. And thank you, everyone, for completing your monthly superintendent evaluations. It is very much appreciated, and we're getting those last little reminders. I do, and I thank Amy for compiling all of that very much, and I'll be meeting with Dr. Lex sometime next week to go over everything. With that, you can start your next year's worth of superintendent's evaluations. And you can see it section 2 and 6. And don't forget to right-click on your meeting to evaluate the meeting or your adjournment for the meeting. Okay. With that, the meeting is closed.